והבקבוק סודה.
הסמל המסחרי שלנו, הלבנים של נעמן. כל המבנים כאן. היה לנו בית קברות של טלוויזיות, סילורה. יש כל הדברים. To build the country, the Kibbutz, Kfar Masaryk, we have the first factory of the Kibbutz movement.
Really?
1937.
I didn't know that.
87,
Yeah.
1938.
Yeah.
We established Naaman and Askar. Here, it's 2 kilometers from here. The years, during the 30s, most of the heavy industry in the country started, like Strauss, Doppelbeck, Atta,
Okay, the ice cream
Vulcan.
and the meat manufacturers.
No,
yes.
no,
Yeah.
It is heavy industry, let's
Yeah.
say. Yes? It's a long story, but it's based on the fact that when Hitler came to power in Germany, 30th of January 1933, they treat the Jews as the Nazis believe, and right in the beginning there was a law that you cannot get money out of Germany, but you can export machinery, heavy machinery. All the factories I mentioned started with the same idea, that they got not just machinery, but experts, engineers and so, and we start, our kibbutz start this industry.
So Kfar Masaryk was the first kibbutz to establish an industry. You said
Naaman.
Naaman. And what was the manufacturing done? What did you make?
Yes. Naaman, let's start a little back. The end of the 30s, Britain and the whole world understood that there's going to be a war. And the cement, the iron, all these materials vanish from the
civilian
life, and we have to build the country. So we start to make bricks. Bricks, red bricks for building.
And in the Bay District.
From the dune, from the sands hills near the sea,
Yeah.
and we make some tavnit,
a mold.
They dry it for 2 weeks in huge stores, and then you put it in the oven with 1000 centigrade, and you get the red bricks.
That's very interesting. I didn't realize that here was the first industrialization of the kibbutz movement and the bricks to build the country.
Yes. After 6 years or so, the World War II finished, and with little cement and some rubble and so on, you get them all and you dry it, and then you have a block for building, and you don't need to spend energy and all that. And then the red bricks factory finished, in fact. Later on, it make china and porcelain and all that.
And ceramic.
Yes, but we were part of the beginning of building the heavy industry of the country.
I see. So not only did you have a role in the defense of the country, but this kibbutz had a role in the actual building of cities in the country. Now, let's go
Just
forward.
a minute.
Okay.
I have to explain that the kibbutz was started 5 years before, and we were looking, or the Jewish organization, for a land for the kibbutz. And there was no land, but here there were swamps, heavy swamps with like water buffaloes. And
Water buffalo and mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes and everything. And that was one part of the kibbutz. The other part was white sand of
the sand dunes from the Mediterranean coast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was no room for real agricultural crops and later on we dried all the swamps, and we have now thousands of dunam of agriculture. But in the beginning, they decided this kibbutz exists or make a living on industry.
That's very interesting, because the general assumption is that every kibbutz started from agriculture. And here you're saying you closed in on the idea that what you can use as your raw materials can become an industry. So how did the kibbutz deal with from the socialist ideas of being a group and socialism, how did it deal with becoming a capitalist enterprise and earning money?
Yes. That was a unique idea of one called Shelhabi, and he went to Chaim Weizmann.
Who was the first president of Israel, but before he was president, yes.
And he suggests to build a shareholders company, to build something very unique, very strange. In fact, it never worked economically, yes? But that's the way it started. I have to say that as the year passed, we start with member of the kibbutz, Naaman, at the beginning.
Kfar Masaryk's bricks were used all over Israel for about 25 years in kibbutzim, towns and moshavim. Most buildings were then coated with plaster like this one here in the kibbutz.
Raw material was here around in this district?
They took the mud from the swamps.
Yes, from the swamp. Now, man was only kibbutz members working in it.
Yeah, in the beginning, yes. The odd engineer from Czechoslovakia, and 1 or 2 or 3 people from outside the kibbutz, that was Naaman in the beginning. Later on, it became very big, with some 100 and later on more workers, and the kibbutz movement forced us or told us that we have to sell it. We cannot have this capitalistic organization, and in fact we sold it to the kibbutz movement. Mm-hmm. Later on the kibbutz movement sold it out, but this is another story.
Okay.
There is a conflict. You cannot be socialist and capitalist in the same time.
Okay, so if we're talking about probably in the 1950s, I presume,
that's later on.
Later on.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the 1950s. Was there, you talk about a conflict of interests between socialism and capitalism.
Yeah.
At any stage in the game, did you have a conflict of employing outside people, and you were the bosses basically, although working maybe shoulder to shoulder with them? Did you have any conflict of outside people who were not kibbutzniks being employed by the kibbutz, and was there any conflict, any resentment or anything like that?
Yes. you have to bear in mind that the kibbutz, with some 100 or 150 members, you haven't have the shoemaker, the barber, the professional people. That the kibbutz is small, so you have to hire, to have people from outside the kibbutz to work on the kibbutz on necessity basis.
Yes.
And
Asa himself continues to be involved in the social and cultural events of the kibbutz. You see him here reenacting the role of 1940s kibbutz Shoemaker. The original cobbler's workshop has been preserved with all the old tools, work tables and wooden shoe forms. Asa, suited up with shoemaker's apron and old European cloth cap, with hammer in hand and nails in his mouth, tells a story to tour groups of how once a year the kibbutz provided every child with a new pair of shoes.
The cobbler's house, yeah.
There was three people, two from the kibbutz and one from Akko.
I see.
There was no resentment or no conflict on this matter. Later, we have to build the kibbutz. So we established a builder group of the kibbutz with members of the kibbutz that started to build houses and that. Later on, we need some more people. So we hired, I remember Ahmed, one of the workers, and then during the years, we have a plumber from outside the kibbutz. Mm-hmm. And there's
a welder, a metal worker.
Yeah. And all that. But it was not the case when you have a factory. Towards the end of it, there were some 20% members and all the others were outside workers.
But I remember in the 1970s, correct me if I'm wrong, you had another factory called Salora manufacturing televisions. And who were the workers and who were the, let's say, the bosses in the factory?
Salora was started, I think, 1970.
1970, when...
in the beginning, there were 20 people from the kibbutz and 2 or 3 professionals from outside the kibbutz.
I see.
As we go to mass production, we have television all over the country.
Yes, I remember when televisions came into Israel and into the kibbutz.
We made color television.
Yes.
This was something that was boycotted, or it was not allowed to have that's by Ben Gurion, and then the kibbutz have a long history of industry.
Yes.
Now we make cardboard boxes for milk.
Now
every cardboard boxes for milk in the country
are made in this kibbutz.
Either we made it or they imported.
Okay.
The sole factory of, and we have a high-tech factory that didn't exist, that collapsed recently, and the same way where Salora, it was the whole world moved to the east, and all the factory, TV factory in Europe and the other places were closed. So industry is part of the kibbutz time from the very, very beginning, from the day one.
I understand. Okay, now let me ask you another question. The earlier 1 second, what's this? I've just got a note from a friend here. Okay, stop laughing, you over there. And please be quiet while I'm talking to us. Okay, I understand. I got the message. Now, shh. Okay, now I've forgotten what I was going to ask you. Now I've forgotten what I was going to say.
We're talking
Yes,
about
yes. All right.
resentment or whatever.
The resentment.
Yes.
When the government, the Labour government, finished its rule over Israel in 1977, when the right-wing Likud government under Menachem Begin took over the country and were voted in legally and democratically, one of the criticisms, the headlines of Menachem Begin was, oh, the rich kibbutzniks sitting by their swimming pools.
Yes.
Oh. Okay, so how did you feel, and how did your kibbutz feel about that, and how do you feel nowadays? Well, okay, we're running into a different area now, but let's go back to the early days of the right-wing government that took over from the left-wing, from the Labour government. How did you feel about the resentment as demonstrated by some towns or cities or people or individuals against the kibbutzim? Did you feel that it was justified?
Around the year of 1950, there was a mass immigration to Israel, Aliyah, from North Africa, from Yemen, from
the Jews who immigrated from the Arab and the African countries.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that was the first failure of the kibbutz movement.
It is very interesting that you say it was a failure. Why was it a failure?
In fact, we have to open our factory for outside work
Because
they need
Ben-Gurion,
money to buy some food.
the Ben-Gurion insisted that the kibbutzim open up workplaces to the 1 million or so Jews who flooded into the country in the late 40s and the early 50s.
What happened? That they live very close to the kibbutzim, in the Negev, for instance. But they were always the employee, the workers, the manager came from the kibbutz. The resentment started then, and part of it is unavoidable.
So why did you, maybe your description or your opinion of it, you say it was a failure of the kibbutz movement. What should the kibbutzim have done not to have failed in the light of the challenge of providing workplaces to the new immigrants?
The answer that I don't know.
That's fair enough. That's fine. I don't know either.
Because they came from Israel communities.
No.
The kibbutz was from Czechoslovakia, from Bologna, from all that.
Yeah,
And
from Europe, basically.
when the Moroccans came to the country, there was an idiom, Morocco Sakin. Morocco with a knife.
Yeah, Moroccans with a knife. Yeah.
It's like
In a
when
way,
the Russian immigration came, they said something about the women come from Russia.
I know what they said, I remember.
So
it's a fear of strangers, you
no,
could say.
every generation, when
Yeah.
the newcomers come,
Yeah.
they start at the lower level, and they climb up. The Russian immigration climbed very fast. The immigration from North Africa never climbed or
It never
barely.
developed in the same way.
Yes.
I see. Okay, well, look, I'm already getting hints here that we have to finish because our time is up. Have a good laugh.
What about the photo? Is it
It's
right?
the video is running now and you're being recorded. So,
Are you sure?
so okay, so we'll just wrap it up here. We'll
Because-
leave it at that.
Did you mean to do a selfie?
Anyway, so
Did you check it?
the video is working and we checked it before we started.
Okay.
Okay.
You have to trust somebody. Anyway, so look, we'll leave it at that, Asa. You've given me a lot of food for thought, and I didn't realize that this kibbutz was the first kibbutz that began the industry of the kibbutz movement. And that Naaman is now an independent ceramic.
No, is just a brand name. It's nothing to do with the.
It's nothing to do with the
No,
original
they bought
factory.
the logo and that.
Oh, I see. So it's not. There's nothing to do with the.
No,
kibbutz.
nothing.
But anyway,
It's all come from
we've talked
China.
about a few things. We've talked about growing up early in children's houses. We've talked about industry in the kibbutz and
Like
this
the
kibbutz.
television.
That please, one moment. We've talked about the industry and we've talked about different parts of the kibbutz. So, Asa, we'll leave it at that. Maybe when we have a massive distribution of this future video channel, you'll become famous. I haven't even asked you real personal questions about yourself, but maybe I'll come back and I'll interview you again on a personal level.
Be my guest.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, so-